Welcome to the Cows Report, the podcast where we connect you to the leaders, stories, and ideas shaping the future of college athletics. I'm Will Reese, Cal's director, and in episode 14, we're joined by Iowa AD Beth Goetz for the big interview. Beth discusses Cal's 25, leading in college athletics today, the Ben McCollum hire, and the ongoing impact of Caitlin Clark on Iowa and the growth of women's sports nationwide. Then, in the lobby, JP Abercrombie, Kortne Gosha, and Reyna Gilbert-Lowry break down Cal's 25 in Columbus, sharing highlights, takeaways, and reflections on the 15-year impact of the Cal's community. Thanks for joining us for the Cal's Report, where the conversation continues long after the event ends. Hey, Will here. Just want to jump on real quick since this is our first pod after Cal's 25 in Columbus and say a couple of thank yous. First to Ross Bjork. Just a huge thank you for hosting us at Ohio State and in Columbus. Ross is just a real great example to all of us of somebody that's risen to the top levels of this industry, yet continues to give back and invest in the next generation. Special thank you to Jerry Davis, our campus coordinator, and the team at Ohio State that helped make everything so cool and smooth on Sunday night. What a session with Ryan Day and Joey Galloway. Really, I felt, got Cal's 25 in the right mood, if you will, and set the stage for a couple of days with their transparency and humor. Big thank you to all of our partners. Many have been with us for 14, 13, 12 years, over a decade, many of us, and a few new partners as well. You all mean so much to Cal's community and continue to allow us to grow and expand the different offerings we have. To our faculty, I mean, it was completely stacked this year. So many great ADs, so many people that came up in the Cal system and are now sitting in that chair, created just a unique environment. And we're there, we're open, we're transparent, and just appreciate everything that group did. Thank you so much for the attendees that came with open minds and hearts and were ready to learn and listen and connect and really made this year's Cal's go. Of course, to my team, we had a great group of 12 interns from around the country, grad students that came in and helped out. And of course, to Laura Keep, Ryan Bradley, and Forrest Reese, just another job well done by that group. If you were with us or maybe following on social media, you saw we got to have a great session with Bubba Cunningham, and we're able to honor him for what he's meant to our Cal's community, which was really fitting since it was our 15th anniversary. And so I call him the godfather of Cal's, and we appreciate everything he's done for us and this industry. As I look back on 15 years and the milestone, the feeling I have is just one of such gratitude. And I look back at where the event started in Tulsa in 2011 and where it is today. And it's cool that there's bigger rooms and more people and big names and all this cool stuff that happens. But the really cool thing is the impact it's had. I know personally for me, it's changed my life. I know that it's been able to have a positive impact on so many in the industry's lives and careers, just like we did a couple weeks ago in Columbus. So that continues to keep us fired up and motivate us to continue moving forward with Cal's, continuing to grow other events for the community, and continue to build into this group. So thank you for everyone who's made 15 years such a wonderful ride, and we look forward to continuing on in the future, including Cal's 26 in Fort Worth. We're excited to be with Mike Buddy and his team at TCU September 27th through 29th, 2026. So mark that on your calendar today. Also, we announced at Cal's in Columbus, Cal's One Day in early June in Atlanta, hosted by Ryan Alpert and Georgia Tech Athletics. We will be back soon with an exact date and more information on that to come. So hopefully you'll be able to connect with us with one of our events coming up. And with that, we're going to hand it over to Ryan Bradley and Beth Goetz with our episode 14 big interview.
It's time now for the big interview here on the Cal's Report podcast. I'm Ryan Bradley, and I am pleased to be joined this month by the Director of Athletics at the University of Iowa, Beth Goetz. Beth, thanks for joining us. How are things in Iowa City?
We're doing great. Thanks so much for having me, Ryan. The sun's shining, and this time of year, when you come off a win on a Saturday, life's pretty good the next week.
Yes, and so we're recording this interview in mid-October. We're on the heels of Cal's 2025, so I want to start there. You've been a part of Cal's for a number of years now. What stood out to you about this year's Cal's experience in Columbus?
Yeah, I don't know how Will does it, but I feel like every year the energy gets even better than it was the year before. But certainly great to have it in that location and be able to showcase one of our peers here in the Big Ten. But I think it's just this time when you got so many things going on in college athletics, it's just incredibly refreshing and energizing to be around so many people in the industry who are excited about the future and want to continue to learn and grow, and they're just incredibly talented group of people to be around.
Well, it was a privilege to bring Cal's to Big Ten country. We had a great response. The faculty was star-studded, as it always is. You were a part of a panel entitled Culture First Leadership, Winning with People and Purpose, alongside Ryan Alpert, Graham Neff, and Zach Selman. Or some of the key themes and takeaways from that discussion that resonated most with you?
Yeah, it's one of the best things, whether you're going as a participant or you get to sit on a panel, you always leave with learning an awful lot. And it's certainly a great group. But, I think there's the consistency and maybe approach to leadership and determining what is best for your campus from a broad picture, obviously, is somewhat consistent. But what is really interesting is I think that group, did a really great job then of dialing in on what that means at their own campus. And so it's not, you can't just plug and play, even though you may know, hey, we have to serve a lot of different constituencies. And so how do you meet them where they are? How do you hear what it is they need and what they desire? And so we heard a little bit of all of those things. And also, what I think might be attributed to the time now, sort of this just need to embrace a little more creativity and thinking outside the box. And a lot of that talk was about how we generate revenue, but I think it's just a general disposition to sort of get into a place where everybody's a little bit more comfortable trying new things. And that sort of, I think was a theme, at least with our group during that session.
One of the other themes that's always present at Cal's is how it's built around mentorship and connections. And I want to talk about your career path and some of those relationships and opportunities as we go through our conversation. But I want to start by asking you, when you think back on your own career, who were some of those mentors who made the biggest difference and maybe gave you a hand up? And how do you try to take those opportunities and relationships that were afforded to you and pay them forward?
Yeah. I was incredibly fortunate to have so many, and, some are impactful because they are with you through big chunks of your development, growth, and time over years. And sometimes it's just a simple interaction that you can have with somebody that sort of stays with you and prompts you to think about things differently. And so I've had a lot certainly along the way. David Benedict, who's now the athletic director at University of Connecticut, is somebody who is I've really looked up to and learned a lot from. I had a chance to work with him a couple different places, and it stayed really connected to him when I was a bit younger in my career. Jim Phillips was a great mentor of mine along the way. And it's hard to start calling out people because there's been just so many that I think have really taken time to invest in me personally, in my growth. Certainly when I first got into administration, Barry Collier back at Butler was my idea and gave me a lot of opportunities. And, you think about how you pour into somebody else. And actually at Cal's was really a full circle moment for me because an intern, a student athlete, and then an intern for me at when I was at Butler University, and Grant Linedecker is now the athletic director at Butler, and somebody I've stayed really connected to and watched his career grow, again, from the time he was working in my office and helping me with compliance and some business office activities. And he's done great things and now lead his own program. So he's just a reminder that, we all need to lean into those relationships and help people grow and learn throughout their career.
Now, you mentioned Butler. Of course, Brad Stevenson, a highly regarded not only coach, but now administrator in the pro ranks. Talk about your relationship with him and maybe some of the things that you gleaned from the opportunity to cross paths with him as well.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is, when people think about him, they think about what he's accomplished from a competitive standpoint and now done it at multiple levels. But I'll tell you this, he's one of the best people I've ever met. And so to me, not that I don't admire what he did back then and what he's done since then, what he's doing now. I think today's, opening day for the Celtics. So, he wears a lot of hats, but it's the way in which he goes about doing his business. I mean, one, he's incredibly authentic and genuine, and just, really cares about people. And, that's, no matter where I've been in my career, whether it's, you're seeking some sort of advice or thought in a basketball moment or just how you manage people moment, he's always been there. But I also think he's a guy that, leaned in early to how you use data and really thinking very cerebrally about how to be effective in different spaces. And he's combined that with what it means to have to build a team and a culture and have true leadership in what he's done. And so I'm just really, grateful that I had an opportunity to see that up close and appreciate his continued friendship, over the years.
You're in your second stop now as an athletic director, first at Ball State, now at Iowa. Each of those institutions has different resources, histories, expectations from the fans. But from a cultural and organizational standpoint, when you enter into those roles, what are you focused on in terms of those immediate priorities? What are the similarities in your approach and maybe some of the ways you have to think about it differently at a Ball State versus an Iowa?
I think the first thing I would say related to what you think about when you first started an institution it's not about what vision you have for what you can or can't bring to a department. It's about learning what's important to that. What are their values? How does the institution operate? How does that fan base and the community that surrounds an institution, how do all of those intersect and what does it mean to them? Because that just doesn't look the same at any two institutions. And certainly, if you're thinking, about the MAC and in Iowa, there's going to certainly be differences that are pretty visible. But I think the very first thing is you got to understand what makes a place work. And the only way you're going to do that is by listening a lot and getting to, giving yourself a chance to dive in and really, understand what's happening in the athletics department. But what does the leadership of that institution, what's the history of that institution, how do those two things serve each other? And so that, I think that approach for me was very similar at both places, even though here, obviously, I came in at COO role as well. But it's it's a lot of trying to really understand how they became who they are and what works well and what doesn't, as is pretty nuanced. And so, there's obvious things that might be different depending on your size or location of your institution. But I think that, outside of maybe having a few more zeros in your business model, a little more attention, a little more public facing, scrutiny, and celebration, by the way, you get both of those things that, in a place that, has a little bit more marketability in that sense. And so you kind of adjust all those different components along the way.
In an era where ADs are balancing so many competing interests, you've got coaches, you've got student athletes, donors, fans, media, as you mentioned, all very interested in what you're doing day to day. How do you work to maintain alignment across your leadership team, across your campus, and with your key stakeholders?
Yeah. And that's what you want from all those constituents, right? It's about what's important to your athletes. And you want every single coach, regardless of which sport they work in, to be passionate and to be great advocates for their own programs. And it's really difficult. I don't think any of us want to be in a position where you can't do everything for everybody. And unfortunately, that's not always as easy to accomplish, at least in real time. And so you're going to, you sort of have to have plans about how you're going to attack those and support each program a little bit differently. But, here, I think the most important thing from my perspective, and and at Iowa is how are you going to lead into those conversations in a way that's really transparent, really clear, and really collaborative. And so, we've spent a lot of time talking to our head coaches as a group about how we were going to navigate in this space, even if that meant some of those in that room, maybe wouldn't benefit in exactly the same way as others. And as opposed to trying to hide from that, we leaned into those conversations, talked about how we got there, why we how we could collectively make those decisions together so that it would benefit, the most of our student athletes that we could. And so I think that piece is really critical. And it's about how you serve today and plan for tomorrow. And those two things may not always look the same, but you got to lay that foundation base if you want to work to being able to grow the whole, whole enterprise. And so relationships and collaborating and really just, I think attacking it straight on as we work together. And of course, any decision you make's got to align with, the values and mission of the institution. And usually when you're grounded in in philosophy and you've got your priorities, you make decisions according to that. Maybe not everybody loves the outcome, but they're going to respect the outcome because you've sort of worked through it in a way that makes sense.
With things being as fluid as they have been in the last several years, and you have to constantly evaluate the way you're allocating your resources and your revenue strategies, do you find yourself having to spend more time than you once did on just laying it all out there and really communicating what we're doing and the why behind what we're doing?
Yeah, I think so. You said the last couple of years, and it really feels like that. That change comes, every 10 minutes to some extent. So, yeah, I think you do. One, in the planning phase, you've got, plan, hey, B, C to Z, and you're starting over again. But I think that void of information creates the biggest challenge. And so regardless of if you don't have all the answers, I think leaning into those conversations with all constituencies. And so, we were talking about our coaches to be sure, our senior leadership, but how are you communicating that to campus and how are you trying to communicate to fans? And laying out what you know today and also making sure that you can own the fact that you don't know exactly what it's going to look like down the road. And so here's where we are. This is what we know. These are the decisions we're going to make today with the information we have. But also assuring them that you're creating a space that you can be nimble enough to adjust. And so when there's going to be some, a steady sort of stream of things in college athletics again, I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but it's certainly 3 to 5 years down the road from where we are right now. And so, information is power. I think it's what breeds trust and confidence in any entity. And so, the more you can share about what's happening, maybe where the gaps in information might be, and what the forces are on the outside that's maybe causing, some of the uncertainty. I think people will come along with you and have some confidence that if when everybody is following the same train and making good decisions for the right reasons, they'll have some patience about where you're headed, both on a campus and as an industry.
That's great insight. I want to switch gears a little bit to your career path. You were a college athlete, a member of the first soccer team at Clemson University, started your career as a soccer coach, and then I think at some point found yourself wearing multiple hats as part-time administrator, part-time coach. Talk to us a little bit about that period of your career and the ultimate decision to hang up the whistle and focus on a career in athletic administration and kind of the why behind that decision-making process.
Yeah. I think, for many of us that are former athletes, our coaches are just so impactful, in our development as people, certainly more so even off the field in my case. But that's really how I got into coaching. I never even occurred to me, and they just were so persistent that you really needed to try this out. And so I had that opportunity. I was going to graduate school and thought I was going to be a therapist. I think that comes in handy time to time still. But one of the things I loved about being in a smaller institution, Division II school, is that as soon as they figured out you could make it to work on time, that's when they started piling on sort of these other responsibilities. it's a great team environment, and it makes sense that you'd love to thrive there because it's sort of all hands on deck. But you learn all sides of the business, even though it's obviously a smaller space than maybe I live in today. I was always intrigued with that, but loved the interaction and certainly loved being on the field. But at some point in time, you started to enjoy and get more comfortable making decisions that were best for our department as a whole, and maybe not as good for our teams. And I thought the second that became easier, probably told me where I needed to start to look. And so I miss coaching every day. The relationship and the impact you can have on a student athlete. I think we do it in different ways in this seat, but it is different than the relationship you have as with your coach and a particular student athlete. And so, but it was formative for me, and I think helped me then and today support our athletes and our coaches with some perspective that I could bring into the chair.
I mentioned at the top, you're in your second stint as an athletic director. When you were hired at Ball State, you came from the outside. You'd been the COO at UConn, and then at Iowa, already in an internal role, serving as the interim for a period of time before being elevated to the permanent AD. Compare and contrast those two transitions into the AD chair as an outsider coming in, having to learn a new place and learn how to be an AD for the first time versus going into a place, having an opportunity to learn and acclimate, having a chance to sit in the interim role, having the benefit of having already been an AD, and how those two experiences have kind of shaped you in your leadership.
Yeah, there's probably some things that are great opportunities when you show up and you don't know a lot about an institution. And there's also challenges with that as well. And so, I think, when you come in from the outside, everyone expects you to lay out sort of a new way of doing things or bring some things that you might have an interest in looking at differently than what was in place before. I think that expectation is there, but you're also obviously trying to figure out how to appreciate what has existed and how you blend those two things together. And so that process takes a long time to learn a new campus. It does. It takes a long time. You can read through a budget, but it takes a long time to really understand the details of an institution's financial plans and what went into all of that. So when you're new to a place, it's going to take you a little bit of time to uncover that piece of the puzzle. When I got to Iowa, I had an opportunity really to lean in and learn a lot about the detail behind the scene in that sort of transition period. And so you started to have a little bit more of a base. And I wasn't here very long. It was about nine months before Gary Breyer retired. So, but you at least started to have some and develop some relationships and learn a lot about how the basic operations were. So that was helpful. But you also have less, I think, expectation than that when I did get the opportunity to move into that role, that you're going to make change, right? So that feels a little bit different, I think, to your team around you. And so, I think anyone, as we progress through our career paths, there's always circumstances about how you enter a role or you get you add responsibility in a seat you're already in, that you have to take into account what does that mean at that moment in time. Is this a place you already know, or you already sort of laid some groundwork where you're going to have some, you got to be more careful about how you make some change. But I'm really fortunate both places to have an opportunity to work around some great people that made those transitions, really smooth.
The Cows audience is comprised of a lot of aspiring future athletic directors, and you had the opportunity to serve as the interim at Iowa. And with the churn we're seeing these days, a lot of folks are going to have opportunities perhaps to be interim ADs before they get their opportunity to be an AD. What would be your words of wisdom to somebody who's stepping into an interim AD role? What are some of the glass half full opportunities with that role, and then maybe some of the challenges that come along with serving in that capacity?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to phrase that because there's a little bit of both. This is actually my second stint as an interim. So I was an interim athletic director at the University of Minnesota for about a year. And, I guess what I would say is, it's no different than wherever you are in your career. You want to lead from the seat you're in. And so when you get a chance to do that, I think you're exposed to exposed to different things, different pressures, different challenges, and different, opportunities to make decisions depending on, how you're charged to manage that period of time by your president or your chancellor. And so, I think one of the things is just the exposure to really see behind the scenes and to start to experience what it will feel, because it happens on day two. One moment you're a peer with the rest of your senior staff, and it does not take long for that to feel a little bit different for them and for you. And so, I think that opportunity in that sense makes it a good one. For you to be able to engage differently on campus or with the president's cabinet or with the board of trustees that you may not have the opportunity to do, if you are in a number two role and part of, somebody's senior staff. And so I think those are really great experiences. The other side of that is if you have an intention to pursue the opportunity for the full-time role, you want to be really clear and have a great understanding, through communication with the president about what that might mean. And so, if you're pursuing a role where you still have, and you don't get that, we still have an opportunity to remain at the institution. And if you do, what does that dynamic then look like with your peers and with your new boss? And so I'll have to consider there. But for me personally, I think they were both, really great opportunities. I learned a lot in those experiences. And I think as long as you understand what the outcomes can be at the end, it's a great role for people to step into.
And we know that basketball is a big deal at the University of Iowa, and you recently had the opportunity to make a head coaching hire in men's basketball. Ben McCollum, who was a really hot commodity in the last search process for a man that coached that a lot of schools had interest in. What was it that stood out to you about Ben and his approach and leadership style during the search process that made you believe he was the right person at the right time for Iowa?
Yeah, I think again, we always start with how do they fit with the culture that you already have on your campus. You might miss on X's and O's, and I certainly don't think we did with him. But you got to get the fit right. We wanted somebody that we knew our fans would embrace, that wanted to be a part of the community here in Iowa City, and really would welcome that sense of coming in and building those relationships and building a program. And he had done that at smaller institutions. And so it happened to be we grew up in the state of Iowa. That was not, a requirement by any sense, but we quickly figured out that just he's one of us. He didn't have to learn to be a Hawkeye. He was a Hawkeye, even though he didn't go to school here. And so that part of the transition made it really unique. But I think just his style and how he goes about building a team, he's really he came in with a confidence about what that might look like, even as he made a transition here to the Big Ten, and just is very committed to the type of athlete that he wants to bring into his program. When I say type, certainly that's to do with the basketball skill, but I think more so the type of kid that he knows he has the ability to coach. And just that confidence of, hey, I've been here, I know how to put together something that can compete. And he's another one whose brain gets picked a lot just in terms of how he breaks down a game of basketball. And so it's going to be a fun ride here, and we're really fortunate to have him.
Coaching transitions always bring a mix of excitement and then that change piece. You've been a sport administrator for a long time at a lot of different places and different roles. Now as the AD, working with a coach like Ben in a revenue generating program, how do you help a new coach settle in, build trust, learn the lay of the land, not just with their teams, but across campus and across, the state of Iowa?
Yeah, I think you hit on something that's incredibly important in the onboarding of whether it's certainly for a head coach is critical, but for any employee, but certainly for a head coach. That has to be a plan. You can't just assume it's going to happen organically. And even you have a coach who's been at other places, you've got to make sure you create a plan that's going to embed or embrace what they feel like that should look like, but that's going to check all the boxes that you need. And so we were really intentional about building out that external plan, the internal plan, what those types of things needs to look like, so you could set him up for success. And it's a lot. You can't, if you miss some of those opportunities early, you can't go back and pick them up 6 months or a year down the road. So who do they need to meet? How do they need to engage with them? How do you give him a base to build on within your institution? So when there's things that he meets and wants to navigate, he has the relationships to do so. And he also has the resources and the support from your fans and community members and students for that matter. I think all of those things are an important part of that process.
Now, I know it's more than a year in the rearview mirror now, but I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the Caitlin Clark experience. You had a front row seat for everything that came with that over a few years' time. What stands out to you as you reflect on everything that came with what happened for not just Caitlin and the University of Iowa women's basketball team, but for women's basketball across the nation, and getting to be a part of that during that ride?
Yeah, I mean, gotta be honest, it's a little surreal now to think back about what those moments. And I was here for both of those Final Four runs. I got to watch that pretty up close and personal, but just amazing to see how you have she's a generational talent. So we take that piece of the puzzle, but it's the catching lightning in the bottle because of the person she was. And I think because of the team she was on and because of the community that embraced her. So all of those things had to happen. I think, none more than who she is, obviously, and the work she's put in. But I think all of those things sort of conspired together at the right moment in history, with a humble, hardworking, phenomenal talent who then now is, a national phenom, is doing great things to professional level and is a household name across the country and to some extent even beyond that. And so it just really was a really special thing to be a part of. And it just, you start to see your crowds grow and a few autographs, and all of a sudden you're sold out. And then there's line after line at your place, which makes sense. But now you're selling out the venues you're going to and looking at these lines building up outside of, where your bus is parking. And it really was a special moment just to see the game grow, to see how she handled that, how her teammates, her coaching staff handled that. And it's going to be fun to watch her continue to have just, incredible success throughout her career.
I'd love to ask you about how you and your staff during that 2-year period when the Iowa brand was front and center, and it wasn't just captivating, the Iowa stakeholders, but the nation, the kinds of conversations and strategy sessions that you were having, things that you were putting in place to try to harness and leverage that opportunity to strengthen your brand, and maybe the way that you guys are continuing to ride that wave of momentum in your athletic department, not just in women's basketball, but across your athletic department and your university even now.
Yeah, I'm really grateful to be a part of a campus community that leaned into that from the beginning. I mean, it was well known from, I think from the start that the campus itself needed to embrace, and not that there was any hesitancy to that, but this is an incredible opportunity to showcase the institution, whether that is different pockets across the country, where admissions, where we really target for out-of-state admissions, and how do you utilize that? How do you help grow your brand? We're able to do that with, through our partnership with Nike, and because Caitlin was supportive of that. And so, once you have that level of attention on your program, you want to figure out not just how to sustain it in women's basketball, following her graduation, but how do you navigate that and try to get it to explode, across every sport that you have. I mean, there's not a prospect that comes in any sport that doesn't talk about Caitlin Clark. There's rarely anybody that comes into, our arena here, whether it's a football prospect on a recruiting visit, or a basketball student athlete who isn't making a beeline for the number 22 on the court to see if they can shoot from the same place where she broke the record. And so those types of things, I think, and she's allowed us, to continue to weave sort of what she's accomplished into our permanent story here in Iowa. But I think being able to leverage that moment in time with the brand, and she'd be the first to tell you, certainly wasn't just her. We had a great group of young women that showed us how to compete at the highest level, but were so approachable and had this level of connectivity, and that our fan base, and I think the country actually felt like they knew her. And that's a different type of skill set. It was, she was able to make that feel really personable. And that's why so many people gravitated to Caitlin and to her teammates and the coaching staff.
Just time for a few more questions here. Want to spend a little bit of time talking about the state of affairs in college athletics. The entire industry is navigating this major change, as we mentioned, whether it's revenue sharing or the NIL, roster caps. How do you and your team stay proactive with keeping your student athletes front and center of those conversations, while also trying to figure out what is the right business model, and how can we put things, guardrails in place that are going to make this sustainable for us in the long run?
I think at the end of the day, it goes back to what are our core values. And when you take it, everybody can have a list, right? Wherever you want to put those or visualize that. But how do you embed those as part of your decision-making process? And I think it's about knowing each and every day that we're here to serve our student athletes and serve our campus. And so when you think about what those pieces of the puzzle might look like, you're always tying them back to what is the experience and what is our commitment to our students to ensure that they leave and have a great experience as they're earning a degree of their choice, and we prepare them for the next 40 years after their time at Iowa to be great leaders, and of course to give them an experience that to where they can compete at the highest level in the Big Ten and across the country. And so it's just a consistent piece of what we do, and making sure it's always a component of that decision-making process, I think is the key piece.
I want to ask you about this from a conference perspective. Obviously, the Big Ten has a big seat at the table in the midst of all of this change. The scope, the footprint of the conference has continued to grow. Now, coast-to-coast membership, significant media deals. Obviously, lots of speculation in the D1 ticker on a regular basis. But I'm not going to ask you to break any news, but all are on the bleeding edge of trying to figure out what are the appropriate business decisions and positions to take in order to create sustainability for your broad-based programs and for the success of your conference and your individual institutions. How do you see the Big Ten Conference positioning itself for success in this new era of college athletics? What you talk about, the core values that go into the decision making on your campus. How does that apply when you're in the room with your colleagues and you're trying to make the best decisions for the collective institutions?
I think it's a very similar process, and I think if we look across the member institutions in the Big Ten, they've been very selective and very similar in the type of institutions that they are. Commitment to broad-based programming, high-level research institutions, and so that's sort of that drove what brought that group together in the first place, including our most recent additions. And so you're always serving that model of wanting to continue to be successful as much as you can from a competitive standpoint. And certainly in the Big Ten, you want to win as many championships as you can across all sports. But that base, I think, gives you a solid value system to start from about what is important at each and every institution. I think the other piece is willingness really to embrace where we are in college athletics. And so, when you have an opportunity, certainly lean into the conversation and try to shape that. I think, not only at the Big Ten, but, the SEC and every conference across Division I wants to lean into those conversations in a way that makes sense for their footprint and for what their goals are. You want to do that as well, but you also want to make sure that you're being as creative as possible as a way to make it sustainable for your group of institutions. And so being open-minded to exploring new things. It's a little bit going way back to the start of our conversation about what we talked about the cows, right? How are we willing to say, hey, let's explore what opportunities might be out there to grow our business model in a way that's going to serve these institutions and serve our student athletes. And you work through those processes, and sometimes you come to a conclusion or an outcome that gives you, an avenue to invite new institutions into your conference or to try a new business plan. And sometimes it doesn't. You learn from that and you go a different direction. And so, but I do think the willingness and the ability to think differently and broadly about what it means and what it's going to take to be successful in a new environment is a key piece to how everyone in our conference is thinking, all of our leaders, our presidents, and certainly, our commissioner at this moment in time.
As one of the few women leading an athletic department at the Power 4 level, what do you see as your role in encouraging and supporting other women who aspire to the types of roles and positions that you've had? And how do you think the industry can continue to open up more doors for women who aspire to a role like yours?
Yeah, I think it's always important for anyone that might be in an underrepresented group in a period of time to understand that you got to do a really good job so others behind you may continue to have an opportunity. And, there certainly weren't quite as many women in these roles previously, but I had been thinking my generation have the opportunity now to start to look up to a lot of great men. And I had champions that were women and a lot of champions that were men that supported me along that journey. And so I think it's continuing to not only provide opportunities to young people through the profession, but to remind them that they have the ability to pursue that path if that's something that they want to do. And so they can start to see themselves in that role and get experiences that provide them an opportunity to really understand a broad picture and develop a broad skill set that they're going to need ultimately if they're going to sit in some of those leadership chairs. And so, that's helping them get comfortable being uncomfortable and maybe jumping around from not only, institution to institution, but maybe having different experiences within an athletic department, moving internal to external and getting your feet wet in fundraising and how important it is to really experience all that. Which is true whether it's for any young professional, but I think, you want to make sure that you're helping that next generation of female leaders have that opportunity to know that they can take that path if that's what they desire.
I want to finish our conversation by just asking that same question, maybe a little more broad context. This is a question we hear a lot from the stage at CALS as we're wrapping our panel, thinking particularly about the CALS audience and these young folks who are maybe early to mid-career, who are thinking, I want to be an AD someday. When you reflect on your own experiences or you're sitting across the desk from someone who aspires to have a role like yours someday, what is the one piece of advice or maybe a few words of wisdom that you have for them to continue on their path and to take steps that will put them in a position to have an opportunity like yours someday?
Yeah, I would start with the first thing, and this is such a common response, which is, lead and be really good from where you are. But I think that, with every step you take in leadership, the key to that is being able to really think strategically. So you've got to think about the decision that's in front of you. But what does that mean in 3 weeks? What does it mean in 6 weeks? What does it mean might be making it for one sport, but how does it impact everybody else? And so the sooner you can demonstrate that you can see around the corners, that you can play chess, I think that's when you start to get a little bit more responsibility and opportunity down the road, because it really is not just about what you're looking at today, but how do you really think big picture? How do you navigate, politics and long-term strategy and put all those things together? And I think that's really where that opportunity for you to grow and to sit in those seats, really lies.
That's great advice. Well, Beth, we can't thank you enough for making time during a really busy time, not only to be with us at CALS, but to join us on the CALS Report podcast. We always appreciate your insight, your candor and engagement, and we wish you the best of luck the rest of the fall. Look forward to seeing you again soon down the road.
Thanks so much, Ryan. It's really great to be a part of the CALS family and good to be with you today.
All right. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. It's time for another episode of the Cows Report, this time recapping Cows 25. My name is JP Abercrombie, and I am here with two great friends and colleagues excited for this conversation. We'll start with my friend in red for a self-introduction.
Hi, everyone. Kortne Gosha, Senior Associate Athletic Director, Capital Planning at University of Nebraska.
Hi, I'm Reyna Gilbert-Lowry. I serve as Executive Associate AD and SWA at Virginia Tech.
And Reyna, I'm actually going to stick with you because this is your first Cal. So as you think back to our time in Columbus, what would you say to someone who's never been to Cal before about the Cal's experience?
I think it was something that I think I kind of had an idea or expectation that I'd asked some of my colleagues, what they had experienced, what I should expect. And I think it was really more than I expected. It was an opportunity to be in the room with some, major change agents in our field, and also an opportunity to have access to so many different leaders. But also, I didn't realize how many friends and colleagues would be there. So it was really an opportunity to meet a lot of new people, but also have that reassuring feeling that there's so many, people that I did know, so many colleagues that were in the room as well, and a really intimate opportunity to be able to connect with leaders.
An intimate opportunity to connect with leaders. I love that. Kortne, you are the Cal's veteran among us. I feel like that's fair to say. How would you reflect on not only the Cal's experience for Cal's 25, but what Reyna said about Cal's and how you would encourage someone who's never been entered before to make this decision for them?
Well, you're right. For me, this was Cal number 10. I'll never forget my first one in 2015. But as Reyna, and just the intimacy and the engagement that you can have with not only peers, but industry leaders, AD, quite frankly, I think in that room, they had their hair down and really give us insight, what the chair may look like, but also as the landscape is rapidly changing, what are your experiences on your campus? And what are the trends in the industry that are here to stay? And some of the things that might be in our, I guess you could say, tool bag that we used in historical athletics that may not be relevant to move forward in the future. So just to have those one-on-one conversations and to be able to break bread and to have the real, I guess you could say, insider baseball around what's happening in our industry.
You mentioned the word trend, and it's not really a trend for Cal's to be in the Midwest, but we were happy to welcome everybody to the Midwest, to Columbus this time around. Thinking back on our time in Columbus, what are some of the first moments that stick out to you all about our experience this year?
I would say our first night, just at the Cows dinner and having an opportunity to really hear Coach Day. As we talk about, again, the pressures of being a professional in this space, football coaches with the P4 level, they get their fair share of it. It was really refreshing to hear his perspective and this he managed to be through adversity. That's relates to a lot of things that we do on a day-to-day right now with all the change and evolving landscape. How do we manage? How do we lead? How do we coach through the adversity? And I thought that was a really a great intimate setting to be transparent.
That transparency is key today, and not often at conferences that you would bring AD head coaches together, especially of our caliber, and to that level of vulnerability that you mentioned. So certainly echo that and appreciate Coach Day and Joey for getting us started right on that opening night. Reyna, is there anything that sticks out to you?
I mean, I'd echo what Kortne said. And then also, just as we kicked off the morning and heard from Clay Scroggins talking about the hidden secret of healthy leadership, really thinking about that emotional health, talking about emotional intelligence. I love the opportunity to be able to kind of look inwardly and see how we can, become better leaders. And I thought that was really great. he was up there preaching. He did talk about his passion and his time as a preacher. And I think he really did a good job of keeping the energy, getting the energy started and kind of allowing us to have some things to reflect on throughout the remainder of Cal's 25.
I appreciate that callback so much, because that ability to like get deep and vulnerable, call some of us out, but call us into reflection first thing in the morning. Really the real opening session of Cal's 25. Think some of us are like, ooh, we just got a mirror put in front of us that we didn't know we needed, right? So Reyna, you mentioned how important that was for you, or setting the tone from a conversational standpoint. But when you think about Cal's 25 overall, was there another session or panel or interaction that stood out to you?
Yeah, I think about the one session that had, it's great to hear from all of the athletics directors. That was one thing, kind of hearing from everyone's perspective across levels, different institutions. But one quote that stood out for me, sorry, I have to look at my notes, Jay Batt, he said, pitch the tent big enough for everyone to find their role. And if it's too narrow, people feel excluded. And I love that. And just being able to hear him talk about the importance of everyone's role and making everyone feel like they are a part of moving the enterprise forward. And I think that's a really important piece of leadership and understanding that everyone plays a part, and not just saying that, but making sure people know that, because there's definitely a lot that goes into it. There's times that people might feel like, they're just kind of going through the motions, but everybody has a part in making sure that they're moving the needle and creating that really positive experience for the student athletes and the coaches and the staff.
And I appreciate that point, just thinking about how important retention is of our workforce, of our student athletes. And you're talking a lot about the culture that we build in our department, or that we try to maintain on a daily basis amidst all of the changes across college athletics, higher ed, or society. Kortne, is there a session or panel that really stands out to you about Scouts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a common thing among the athletic directors that presented was really about institutional alignment today. Right now, there, as things are changing, just not only in higher education, it's also forcing college athletics to change with it, right? And so the alignment and coordination that's associated with that element of where we are in our place. But it was really interesting for me. I particularly enjoyed the session where we honored Bubba Cunningham, who's just a giant in space and has been a long-time friend of mine. But the articulation of his career, and I think that Bubba's been one of the greats to show how you align with the academic mission and advance the athletics program. And it was really refreshing for me just to see, again, his path from Ball State to Tulsa and to Carolina, and how that has really evolved. But it's a reminder, I think, for all of us that, we are an umbrella of a greater institution, right? And one that is front facing. And so comes with its own dynamics. But again, just to see, I think all of the athletic directors talk about how they really had to and work a lot with the institutional aspect of it. I know that's something Troy focused on here at Nebraska. But again, it was just refreshing and reassuring to hear that amongst all the AD panels.
That shout out to Bubba, special jacket. We got to figure out how to get one of those ourselves, right? One day. We got to do our time. But also a special moment with him and Zach Selman and their relationship over time, or even Bubba. Is it fair to call him grandfather, or was it godfather?
He's the godfather.
Okay, godfather. I was like, grandfather. Sorry, Bubba. Ooh, the OG of Cal's, and certainly his support, the evolution of Cal's over time. So even just to reflect on that was a special moment to be a part of. And I know personally, I tied it in higher being in the conference with him, with Reyna, being able to see his leadership on a daily basis. Talk a little bit about letting your hair down and being vulnerable, being able to talk with him about life beyond athletics, life beyond higher education, and just see the human aspect of athletic directors and peers. Because I feel like sometimes these roles were a lot to hold on to kind of mask up to do these things. That's hilarious, to be a little free, and also try and find problem solutions problems that's a piece of it as well. But definitely a different piece of it. So we talked about Vowels is an important space while we're there. Being in Columbus was a special experience. But what about CALS beyond? What does it look like for us to bring CALS 25 back to campus? And are there special lessons that you learn there that you really want to focus on implementing at your institutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something every year there's a new nugget that you bring back to the house. And sometimes you put nuggets in the small room with a small group of ladies that you highly respect and peers. Sometimes you get nuggets from people that I always found to connect with Brian Blair. Because Brian Blair and I was at Middle Tennessee, he was at Rice, we were still at AD, and we were always talking about what the next and all of those type of things. And now to see him really doing a phenomenal job in on his second contract and has truly built a program, what's next? And so to pick his brain from that, from that perspective, Anthony Henderson, another good friend of mine, and from first CALS to now, and these people are sitting and Graham Neff hired me at Middle Tennessee, and I think you learn so much that, quite frankly, you don't get the opportunity to have that level of engagement at the other professional development settings in our industry. And so CALS holds a special place in my heart. Our athletic director, Troy, has kind of made it a priority. So the majority of our staff, Kristen Brown, Haven, Brandon Meyer, and Tyler Kai from our team all went this year and went last year. We rolled deep from the Midwest. So, but we really enjoy it, and it shows, again, the level of importance for our athletic director and our senior leadership team to be there every year.
And I appreciate the shout out to Brian Blair, not only as a person who got to moderate a panel with him and reflect on our shared experience through Rice at different times, but also to think about the gems he dropped and that resources plus relationships equals retention. I think that had everybody in a chokehold for a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
We had that piece going, but also as you talked about not only Bubba's path, but Brian's path and being able to kind of emulate, maybe seek mentorship and sponsorship in a different way through CALS and even grow alongside of folks that maybe have been idols or otherwise just in the industry and learn from them and kind of grow with them over time. That's something in what you said that really stuck out to me. Reyna, are there nuggets that you're taking back or that you're really excited from your first CALS experience?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really liked was, it often feels like we are in competition with each other, right? We're in competition for student athletes, for resources. And CALS was a place where people were able to share their ideas, their successes and failures, and allow us to be able to, this worked there, let me take some notes, and this didn't necessarily work. And so I think just being able to hear what has worked at different places, like we're all really, again, trying to move the needle in the same way. And we have different opportunities to do that, different resources depending on where we are, but being able to have people be transparent about what worked at their institution, I think was really helpful. And then also the camaraderie piece and the networking piece, as I started out saying, there was a lot of people that I knew there, which was great, but then also meeting a lot of new people. So following up with people, being able to create more networks and, pick their brains when there are things that we're trying to work on, whether it's in the revenue generation piece, fundraising piece, facilities, all of those things, and being able to say, this worked, you worked on this project, we'd like to do something similar, can we pick your brain? So I just think it just allowed the ability to have, just more of a broader base of people to be able to learn from and lean on.
I actually want to stick with that thought because I think he brought a lot of good points about CALS as a community from a professional standpoint. But let's get your responses to your CALS as a community from a personal standpoint. What does it mean impact on you all, and to have people who understand the pressure, the pace, the industry changes at various levels? How does this recharge you personally, or what impact does that have on you beyond the professional responsibilities?
Yeah. I think, JP mentioned it earlier, a lot of our roles, sometimes we have to mask up. I feel like Cal is an opportunity where we can kind of mask off, right?
Mhm.
And just that, again, level of engagement where, you know what, everybody's kind of sharpening their tool sets here, right? And we're going to find out, hey, do I feel like I'm on the right path? And to hear someone on the stage you can align with, that you respect and appreciate, to say, hey, I feel the same way, and this is how I handle it. And so I think on a personal level, again, it resonates with a lot of people, and the exclusiveness of the engagement, I think, is really, really. Will has done a really good job of making sure that that's maintained, and that people can be in the room.
Yeah. I think for me to know that, folks like Ross and, Pat and Rent, like they can take a couple days out of their busy schedule, Bubba, and, and they can still not just share and be transparent, but also learn. I think that really sets a great example for those people that are, trying to be in their shoes. And if those folks that have been in the industry and, change the game can make that time, because that personal development is really important. And so, you have the professional development piece and the personal development, they're pouring into themselves and pouring into other people as well. I think that really says a lot about, as you're saying, Kortne, about the environment that Will has created. And it does allow us, it's lots of, it's definitely, there's times when, we're buttoned up, but then there's also times when we get to kind of let down a little bit and can reconnect. And it was a really positive experience.
Yeah. Hey, JP, I'll interject. One of the things I get tickled about every year, you're never going to have to guess where Randall was going to be sitting. Randall, front row, center, every panel, because again, it's so important, and he wants to understand, hey, where's some things in ways that I can improve, but to listen to our presenters and other ADs. And so I know Will rip out that every year, but I personally get tickled because it never fails. He's going to be front row, center. He makes the rest of us feel like slackers because we're in the back of the ring. So.
Yeah, special message to Randall's student athletes. Know that he is modeling what he asked you to do. He is sitting in the front row center every time. And also often one of the best dressed, if not the best dressed. I feel like he loves hunting on folks.
No
and
doubt.
Just trying to show us up a little bit. So, Randall, we see you. We appreciate you making us all better. In the spirit of making us all better, we reflected a bit on the history of CALS and kind of the legacy of CALS for the first 15 years. Where do you see CALS heading in the years to come?
I think it's going to be a platform that, again, I think the titans of our industry are very, very engaged and committed to this. And I think that's a signal that hopefully it's here to stay. And again, certainly commend the job that you've done, but the fact that other, ADs stepping up and saying, okay, I want to bring this to my city, right? And let's bring out, let's showcase what we're doing. I think it's great for our industry. I think it's great for developing the next set of leaders. To your point, I remember being a young associate on my first out, and now you called me kind of the old head in the room, been geared up. Hopefully, I got more in me to keep going forward. But again, I hope it continues. Big advocate of leading the cows one day. I've not been to a one-day session just yet, but excited to see Brian Albert, who's a good friend of mine, and freshly minted AD say, hey, we're going to take this and advance it. And so that's good, and I hope it's here to stay.
Yeah. And as someone who just experienced their first cows, I'm really excited to, see where it has come, to where it started and where it is today, and see where it's going to go. I definitely think, it's definitely going to be a place where we have the pulse on what's going on in college athletics. Every day something is changing. I don't think there's ever going to be, a time where there's a lack of things for us to talk about, how we can continue to move forward collectively. And I'm just excited to see, the people that are in the room, but also hopefully there's, an opportunity to make space for more people to be able to experience CALS.
I love that. CALS is here to stay, and it's going to keep growing. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And we need each other to keep making sure that the membership stays intact. We keep growing together. We keep glowing together. The Shine Ups, the Randells, the Bryans, the Kortne Goshas in the room who've been around and are pouring into the next generation of us.
She just called you old, Kortne. I just want you to know that.
Very lovingly.
Might have been without stuff.
Your words, we receive it. Keep playing through, my guy. So obviously we're reflecting on Cal's very fondly, a lot of light, a lot of joy, maybe even a lot of optimism. When you think about all of the changes that are going on in college athletics around higher education, what is the thing that gives you the most optimism following your time in Columbus?
Reyna, you want to take that one?
I mean, it's still at the core of what we're why we're here, our student athletes. And to be able, in a room like that, we have so many people that are products of the student athlete experience. And, one of the reasons, probably the reason that we are where we are is thinking about what that was like for us, the people that made a difference in our lives and wanting to do that in the future. So at the core, it's supporting our student athletes and to be able to see them succeed on and off the field, in the community, in the classroom is really important. So we have a lot of outside factors and noise that's, causing us to shift our perspective a little bit. But I think it's important to kind of remember why we're here and why we started why we started doing what we're doing.
Yeah. I think it further underscores the fact that when you're in leadership or leadership roles, to be genuine and authentic in the landscape that we're in today. Quite frankly, we got to keep the main thing to Reyna's point, student athlete experience and what that looks like. Do some of the elements around that change. Yes. Get some of the posture and position change. Yes. And I think over the last year or two, leadership tremendously brought in our space because we've had to become valuable. Some departments have grown, some departments have shrank, some departments have reposition themselves, reorg to survive this shifted landscape. So, again, I think, being authentic and genuine, we are a people business. That quite frankly, it doesn't work without the people, right? And so our job is to support these student athletes, even in this landscape. And so how do we do it in the most efficient, effective business approach, just in this landscape? And I think that's kind of the priority of the focus. And I think Cal's kind of brings that back to the focus as well.
Yeah, Kortne, you said keep the main thing. And it reminds me of something Chris Grant shared with us from his commissioner seat amongst ADs on the conference about tradition without innovation leading to stagnation, and how powerful that was, kind of going back to Ross's opening and thinking about how there's so many things that are changing around us, around higher education, around college athletics. But classroom, we're going to class, the school piece and competition are constant. Everything else might look a little different. And it sounds like for both of you and certainly for myself, Cal's is a place where we can sort of work through that everything else, not only professionally, but also personally, and look forward to that community aspect together. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, well said.
Very fair.
Well, it has been an absolute treat reminiscing a bit, recapping our time in Columbus. Before we close this out, I just want to give you both an opportunity to say some final words about how the Cal's 25 experience left an imprint on you and what you plan to take forward in this next year.
Reyna?
Sure. I think that the timing was right. October, by the time we get here, we've been going. So I think, for me, just taking a moment to have a chance to pour into myself professionally and personally was really important. And I am excited to be able to share the things I learned with my colleagues and also to encourage those people around me to take advantage of Cal's if they haven't had a chance to do so.
Just to echo that and kind of underscore Reyna there, I think she's absolutely right. Again, it is an opportunity to kind of recharge your batteries in the middle of the year. Kind of after all the hype, especially in the fall with all the fall sports. But again, just the engagement with peers, mentor. I think this is the first chance that some of us from our TA leadership class, we were all kind of in one room together. So a little bit of a mini family reunion from that aspect. But again, it's a great opportunity to recharge your batteries and sharpen your tools and kind of go back to your institution and again, pour into your why.
I love that. And I appreciate you both, not only for our time together as NCAA Leadership Institute comrades or classmates, if you will, but certainly as Cal's cohort mates as well. So thank you both for going on this little recap journey with me and being willing to be such great participants in Cal's 25, because you pouring into yourselves certainly makes all of us better. So thank you for that. And thanks to our listeners, whoever enjoyed this conversation and our wise cracks with each other and can keep us well fed by coming to Cal's 26, which will be in September at TCU. So stay tuned for more opportunities like Cal's One Day that Kortne mentioned and other ways to fill your cup, as Reyna also discussed. But we hope to see you at the next Cal's event.
Thanks, JP.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to episode 14 of the Cal's Report. A big thank you to Beth Goetz for joining us, and to JP Abercrombie, Kortne Gosha, and Reyna Gilbert-Lowry for helping us look back on Cal's 25 and what makes this community so special. You can find the Cal's Report on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to follow us on social media at 80 Symposium on X, at the Cal's Report on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. You can also visit us anytime at 80symposium.us for event details and more content from across the Cal's community. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep leading the way in college athletics.